Students, what is something your teacher did that really pissed off the whole class? Story 1. I had a college professor who was teaching a history course to a bunch of education majors in their junior year. She would ask us questions all the time about which things she hadn't really lectured on and then pull the "really? No one knows the answer to this?" Well, I guess we'll just have to wait for someone to answer. We were all education majors. We knew that trick. We waited her out every single time, and she always broke first. Story 2. Pretty standard teacher stuff like keeping the whole class in at lunch for something that one person had done. It was the fact that the school had very clear behavior and punishment policies that teachers and pupils alike understood that pissed us off, because she blatantly broke them just to prove a point. Story 3. My German teacher would make you retake spelling tests until you got 100%. Once you did, you could sit and do whatever you like until the whole class got 100%. This caused a lot of pressure on everyone, as he used to belittle the students who didn't pass first or the second time. If you were the only one left, then he would stand over you and watch you struggle. One test day I decided to bunk off and I got caught. I burst into tears and explained how horrible this teacher was and that I'm never going back into his class. I was moved into a higher set German class with an amazing teacher, and surprisingly, my German improved. That teacher sounds like a little gem, doesn't he? I mean, what's the harm in a little bit of humiliation and pressure to make students learn? Oh wait, that's not how education works. Thank goodness you were able to escape that toxic environment and find a teacher who actually knows how to inspire and support their students. It just goes to show that sometimes the best way to learn is to get away from the people who are holding you back. Story 4. This was my second year in 12th grade in school. My teacher, unable to manage 20 of those rowdy kids, is pretty enraged by the end of the class. She has a thing about counting every piece of equipment after class, and she begins counting the Newton meters. Now, if you don't know what these are, they are literally a metal spring with plastic around it that measures how much an item weighs. This teacher counted 19, when there are definitely 20. So she holds us back from lunch, and then she brings the faculty head in, and we get a bollocking from her. Cannot steal from the teacher, it's unjust, yada yada. If we were rowdy before, we're raging now. And she requests the least well-behaved kids open their bags. Of course, these kids are protesting, but the teacher offers detention if they don't comply. So after rummaging through a bunch of pubescent kids' bags and finding nothing, she finally goes back to her desk to find the Newton meter sitting behind her world's best teacher mug. The look on her face, priceless. Story 5. Head teacher of my high school tried to expel me for having an epileptic seizure in front of him, said I was a danger and distraction to other pupils and was disrupting the school. I ended up being kept out of school for 2 months while my parents fought my case. And in that time, almost all of the rest of the teaching staff, who were furious with this decision, kept me supplied with work and even one-on-one tutoring when needed. This was in a rural area where the next nearest school was 40 miles away, so we had no other school choice. Story 6. We were about 10 and 11 years old. It was the last period of the day, and the music teacher was subbing our science class. He was sitting on the computer, and we were all getting on with work. Towards the end of the period, our homeroom teacher comes into the classroom and exclaims, "It's the end of the day. Why aren't you all packed up?" To which the music teacher replied, "I told them and they refused to." Excuse you? He hadn't said a thing to us, so we were all protesting. Even so, our homeroom teacher told us off for being disobedient as the music teacher slithered out of the room and we had to stay 10 minutes late as punishment. Lying snake. Story 7. At the university, my professor did not tell us the time of our examination, despite numerous emails from like 20-odd students, as well as the head professor of the course. This exam could have been any time from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., and I lived 90 minutes from campus and relied on crappy public transport to get into the university. It got to 9 p.m. the day before the exam, and no one knew when the exam would be. If we missed it, we would fail the whole module. So I took the train to the city where my university is, booked a cheap, crappy hotel room for the night just to make sure I was there on time. And we all took the exam at 12 p.m. after getting an email an hour before the exam was being held. So I wouldn't have made it in time if I had stayed home. Worst part about that was that no one cared, not the professor, not the course lead, or the head of our school. They all just left 30 students in the lurch, allowing them to potentially fail the exam and therefore the module. That sounds like an incredibly frustrating and unfair experience. It's unacceptable for a professor to be so disorganized and careless about their students' education. Like, it's even worse that they didn't seem to care about the consequences of their action. I'm at least glad that this student was proactive and made the effort to ensure that they're on time. But it's a shame that you had to go through all of that unnecessary stress and expense. It's totally disappointing when the people who are supposed to be helping us succeed in our education end up letting us down. Story 8. 3 words. Collective punishment teachers. If you want your whole class to instantly hate you, this is how you do it. Another thing I remember, we had to go to a nearby sports field for PE, which was about a 10-minute walk from the school. We only had a 5-minute gap between lessons. No matter how many times we explained that we had PE, some teachers would always kick up a fuss if we were late to the lesson after PE. It also led to students missing the school bus if you had PE as the last lesson of the day. I'm sure some parents complained because they started ending PE lessons 5 to 10 minutes earlier. Story 9. The teachers who had spent half of the class time getting people to wear their uniforms correctly, in the UK by the way, and then not have enough time to cover all the topics for the day, usually leaving us severely behind or backed up with homework. No one cares that someone has to get their tie the right length or their shirt tucked in. What makes it more of a joke is that they say not having uniform will cause distractions. Yet not once on a non-school uniform day did we have anything like that happen. Story 10. Not a teacher, but the administration had all of us in middle school wear student IDs on a lanyard color-coded by which hallway your classes were in a single day. Sparked massive actual protests from the students because even though my town is pretty low on crime rates, that administration, middle school and above, essentially treated every kid like they were already a criminal or had the strong potential to be. There were so many protests on the lanyard BS that they stopped doing it after winter break because it'd be bad publicity if they kept giving out detentions for insubordination the way that they were. They also did things like assigned seating at lunch and forced the middle schoolers who wanted to see the high school football games to be fenced in as to not cause trouble. Story 11. I had one of those teachers that just put a bunch of activities on the board and then browsed something on their laptops all lesson. The worst part was, it was a math teacher. The only thing that she'd do was maybe tell us to shut up once or twice, apart from one time. Possibly after one of us had had a word with someone about how little she did, she suddenly snapped and sent the entire class outside until we were ready to work. We all just laughed our butts off and browsed our phones. The ones who actually cared about algebra went back in until the teacher decided to come and check on us. She just stood there. We were all completely silent until I decided to break the silence. Nice of you to join us. Oh boy. Basically, after that, we compiled a document of what she'd been doing so that we could have a talk with the dean or something about what had been going on, but not before someone accidentally shared it with the teacher. And so, for the last term, she was with us, she actually improved. So yeah, that's my story. It sounds like a classic case of a teacher who needed a wake-up call. It's frustrating when educators don't take their responsibilities seriously, but it's great to hear that your class came together to address the issue and ultimately see some improvement. And accidentally sharing the doc with the teacher, talk about an awkward moment, but hopefully it all worked out for the best in the end. Story 12. In my second semester of my first year of law school, everyone in my class, 80+ people, had to take a research class. This class was taught by 4 different law librarians, but followed the same syllabus. It was also worth 1 credit. These librarians ran the class as if it was 3 credits. We had to read, conduct legal research, write 2 memos throughout the semester, and when we had 5 other classes, all within the 2 to 4 credit range, plus 1 specific class was notoriously difficult. Anyway, halfway through the semester, my class gets pissed at the workload to credit ratio, and someone starts a petition to reduce the number of assignments and or change the grading for the class from a letter grade to a pass-fail. Almost the entire class signs. There were a few holdouts, but the student who started the petition delivers it to the librarians. The librarians remove 1 or 2 assignments, but otherwise discarded the petition. Those who signed all awkwardly suffered through the rest of the semester. Story 13. One of our lecturers at university once. Basically, he doesn't let us talk to him at all unless we make an appointment with him. Something that usually basically takes 2 minutes to answer? Nope. Write an email and he'll get back to you. You stop him in a hallway to ask him a question? No. Only through email and scheduled times. Like, even if it literally takes less time to explain something to us than to say, I only answer questions during scheduled meetings. So email me and we can arrange something. He will insist on scheduling you in and then locking himself in his office. That's one way to piss off an entire year group of students. Story 14. In GCSE English, he taught us the wrong novel for almost the entire team. We read this book over and over, answered essays, and remembered and studied every significant narrative meeting. Apparently, none of the faculty heads had checked up on him until about 6 weeks before our exams, when they realized that all of our work was on a book, not even on the syllabus, and all of our time was effectively wasted. So to rectify it, we lost all our PE lessons, had to stay late after school 3 days a week, and spent 3 out of 5 lunch breaks cram learning the actual book with another teacher. Safe to say our class wasn't happy at all, and most parents complained as it could affect our ability to pass the exams. Story 15. Math teacher, GCSE year. Teacher gave us a piece of coursework that we had a month to do. Now, we weren't exactly the brightest bunnies at math in that particular class, just under average, but somehow every single student in that class decided that we were going to go above and beyond to try and up our grade. We collectively pulled together, worked our butts off, and some of us even going without sleep at times so that we could work on it and provide help to the others, myself included. When we handed in our coursework, there was a pretty good feeling in the class. We thought we had done well and were pleased with ourselves. When we got our papers back, we all got higher grades than usual, and in many cases, did even better than we hoped, myself included. Then, the teacher informed us that the coursework was only mock and didn't count for anything. We now had to do the real coursework in the span of 2 weeks. There wasn't a riot. Everyone just went quiet. We were collectively stunned in disbelief. No one said anything at all. We simply couldn't believe it. Over the next 2 weeks, I was pretty much crying every night. I'd burned myself out over the mock and was just too tired. I had also been recently diagnosed with CFS, which didn't help my concentration or mood at all. I wasn't the only one either. Everyone else was having issues, and all the camaraderie that we had built up over the month previous had just dissolved. Handed in my coursework after the fortnight was up, and then went and cried in the girls' toilets because I knew it was awful, especially compared to the mock that I'd been so proud of. The results from all of that were nearly all below our usual grades. I had just about scrapped my old average. The teacher then rubbed salt in the wound by saying that she was disappointed in all of us. No one had the energy to argue. We just took it. I think one person tried complaining to the head teacher afterwards, but nothing came of it. For extra injury, that teacher had several math classes, but we were the only one that she had pulled that stunt on. Well, that teacher certainly pulled a sneaky move. It's like she wanted to crush all the hopes and dreams and the spirit of her students just for fun. And then to add insult to injury, she had the audacity to be disappointed in all of you? I mean, come on. Who does she think she is, Gordon Ramsay or something? At least you all learned a valuable lesson. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, especially if it's a mock basket. Story 16. First day as a new teacher in our school, and she came from a private school originally. Asked the whole class what a hyperbole was, and we were silent as we hadn't heard the term before. She rudely goes, "Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was teaching a top-set English class." Everyone in the class unanimously agrees after the teacher leaves to go get photocopies to make that teacher's life a living hell. Some students piped up and said that she was just as rude as that when talking to her tutor group. Cue the next few weeks of being angels with our original teacher and being the worst class ever with the rude one, plus complaining about the rude teacher to the original one and getting our parents to send in complaints about the rude one. We had her fired by Christmas. Story 17. Oh, I've had so many. Now, the first teacher was new to the school and taught us science in year 10. She was always 20 minutes late to class, and she was a fun teacher, but our lessons were only 40 minutes, so we'd literally waste half a lesson being late. Pissed me off to no end. Now, another teacher lost 2 years worth of my science coursework, which I had to redo by the end of the week, and that was in 3 days. I'm surprised I got the grade that I did, and she didn't help. And finally, the doctor. This one makes me laugh. I don't know how the rest of you address your teachers, but here in England, it's common to call them Miss and Sir, but not the latest science teacher in year 10. Oh no, you had to address her as Doctor, followed by her name, which was incredibly close to a well-known vegetable, which we took advantage of. And if you didn't, she wouldn't answer or even acknowledge you. She asked if she could hit us, asked our parents if she could smack us upside the head, belittled us because we were a public school kid from rough areas, and this was all within the week. Needless to say, we made her time hell, and she ran out of the school crying, leaving all of her belongings except her handbag by Tuesday the following week. We didn't see her again. Oh, and every substitute who ever thought that they were God when they walked into the room. Story 18. Didn't happen to me, but it was actually in the news recently. In a school, a number of students were assigned to taking over for some teachers who had gone to a conference and were told to wear business attire and only bring small bags. No backpacks allowed. Some of them brought backpacks because they lived far away from the school and had to bring a change of clothes, laptops, etc. because they needed to do schoolwork later that day. The faculty member in charge got so pissed that he burned their backpacks and other bigger bags with all of those belongings inside and then called them stupid because they didn't keep their phones out of their backpacks. So it looks like that faculty member was really heating things up. I guess they wanted to teach those students a lesson in following instructions, but instead they just ended up burning bridges. Like, seriously, who burns backpacks? That's like a fiery mess just waiting to happen. Let's hope that faculty member learns to keep their cool in the future, although they probably got fired if I was to guess. Story 19. In 5th grade, we had a sub who was a real jerk. From making a kid cry for not bringing a pencil to slapping her desk every 5 minutes for no reason. But one incident stands out during math. The class was quite rowdy because we had PE later. So, being the massive stuck-up jerk that she was, she suddenly stops writing, erases the board, and angrily tells us to put our books in the bag and get out a piece of paper and write down what she was writing down before she erased it. Whoever didn't do it wouldn't be allowed to go out to PE. The class went crazy. No one could remember anything except for a handful of kids who were then allowed to leave. I eventually had enough, and while she was on her desk staring at her mug, secretly got my notebook out under the desk and copied half onto the paper. She was satisfied enough that it wasn't empty and then let me go. Soon enough, half the class did the same, and from my 11-year-old self, screw you, Mrs. Georgina. The ironic thing is I now teach high school level math. Story 20. So I just finished my high school, so soon I should be going to university. But during my 4th year of high school, my class had this German teacher who was totally unbearable. She kept shouting at everyone and giving bad notes without any proper reason. Once, we had this test where only 2 people got at least 6 or more, and all the others were insufficient, so everyone was already mad at her. But then, she did the worst thing she could have possibly done. I took in my test a honest 4, not good in German, my fault, although I tried to do my best nonetheless. Yet she calls me out in front of everyone, and she just says that I am dumb in the language because even if I study, I'm a failure. Needless to say that everyone got pissed off at her, as we were a very supportive class of one another and started reporting her to the principal and started boycotting her lessons as well. From what I've heard, these things happened in other classes, and she in fact didn't get to renew the contract the year later, thankfully. But because of her, I stopped having zero interest in learning German, a language that I studied for 7 years, and others had the same effect as well. But now, I've got that interest back thanks to another good and supportive teacher. Moral of the story, bad teachers can really destroy the interest of one student in a subject. It looks like that teacher's idea of teaching was to spread negativity and destroy students' self-esteem. That's not how that works. Good thing she wasn't renewed, but it's a shame that some students lost interest in a subject just because of her. Maybe she should stick to just teaching rocks or something, because I don't think they're going to complain or talk back. In the comments, has anyone had that one professor or teacher who you just couldn't stand?